Video games are a lot like music. They conjure up images of the places and people around you when you first played them. As luck would have it, my older brother Chris has been around for most of my life. There are plenty of games I can't play without thinking about him. He's permanently etched into my ROMs, so to speak. So on this, his 40th birthday, I thought I would share some of my favorite memories involving him. Fantavision for the Apple II wasn't really a game, but my family never used it for anything other than goofing around, so we'll count it. Fantavision allowed you to create short little animated films. It was actually pretty incredible by 1980 standards. When I was about 8 or so, Chris and my older brother Dave discovered the program at some program for the socially awkward down at the Franklin Institute, and they both came back thinking they were some kind of Don Bluth. And to be fair, they did have a knack for it. Chris, in particular, really pushed Fantavision's limits. He created elaborate shorts, the likes of which I can only begin to approximate even now as an adult. Now, I was quite a bit younger and could barely understand concepts like frames and sprites, but I was always chasing Chris's brilliance, and coming up woefully short. Unfortunately, Chris's work has been lost to time, but my crude attempts at animation, which were usually ultra-violent stick-figure brawls, always served as a reminder of the genius I'd be chasing for the rest of my life. But Chris had some serious gamer cred as well. A lot of people claim to have beat Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, but Chris remains the only person who I have ever personally seen beat Mike Tyson. This was literally something I bragged about at school. I was truly in awe. It's a gaming feat I still have yet to complete successfully. After watching Chris beat Mike Tyson, I was desperate to beat a Nintendo game to prove I could hang. So, a weekend or two later, I woke up at 6 a.m. on a Sunday and set out to beat Rampage, one of the easiest games of all time, so I could join the club. About 2 hours in, Chris came down into our basement and, to my surprise, asked to join in on the action. We sat there for a few hours and worked our way through the end of the game, crushing every city in our wake, and we were treated to the worst ending of all time. Despite how terrible it was, I'll always look back on this stupid ending with a degree of fondness, because it was the first time I ever beat a video game, and Chris was there. So maybe this lifelong obsession of mine is his fault, who knows, but I'm really glad I got to share that moment with him. Not all of my memories of Chris are stellar, though. One I would like to forget involves Street Fighter II. Street Fighter II was the game everyone wanted to own when it hit the Super Nintendo. There was just one slight problem for me. I didn't own a Super Nintendo. Chris and Dave did. I remember showing up in his room one day and just throwing $35 of hard-earned birthday money at Chris and offering to pay for half of it if he'd just give me the privilege of playing. Probably through some combination of me being an obnoxious 10-year-old and Chris being a pissy teenager, he refused. It was his system, and he wasn't going to let me play. Our mother, perhaps wanting to avoid a headache more than anything, silenced our debate by purchasing the game herself, telling us we'd both have to share. End of story. I left happy, but Chris was sore. And he got even sorer when I proceeded to beat him at it. A lot. And when I beat him, I got in this habit of just staring at him. It pissed him off so much that he would straight up sit on me in anger. And believe me, if you've seen pictures of Chris from back then, you know that wasn't a pleasant experience. So, Chris just seemed to give up after a while, and I was left to incessantly practice against the computer, ratcheting the difficulty all the way up to the dreaded level 7 in order to prove my awesomeness. But the computer was just too tough. The Ruthless M. Bison just too much for me to conquer. I remember launching the controller onto our floor, proclaiming that nobody could beat this game on level 7. But Chris interjected and told me that if I was just going to turn the game off, I should give him a shot. I told him that wasn't fair. He hadn't gotten to the final boss on his own, and he wasn't good enough to beat him anyway. Chris calmly argued that if he couldn't do it, there was no harm in letting him try. Well, I took the bait, and he nailed it. First time, with Zangief no less. I had to watch the credits roll on SF2 with Chris just staring at me the whole time. I wanted to capture footage of Zangief's ending for this project, but much like Tyson, I just couldn't do it. Chris will forever be the Ryu to my Sagat. We also played a lot of RPGs, which were a tricky thing. 3 boys and never more than a few save slots to spare. For most of my life, Chris and Dave would always work through them while I watched from the sidelines. But Dave eventually left for college, and that left Chris without a partner when Secret of Mana arrived on Christmas morning 1993. Whether it was by necessity or benevolence, I'll never know. Chris let me join in on the fun for Secret of Mana, though. He always made me play as the weirdly androgynous sprite child, but we worked as partners, and for me, it was an absolute joy. But then, I got grounded. I don't know why, but the punishment, I do remember. No video games for a month. I let my partner down. I had to watch as Chris made it to the very last battle of the game, the dreaded Mana Beast. But then, he did a weird thing. He paused it. Knowing full well of my punishment, Chris just told me to pick up a controller and join in. He didn't really need my help, it's a pretty easy game, but he said he'd gotten most of the way with me, and he wanted me there for the ending. It's really impossible to convey or understand the weight of this gesture without knowing exactly how seriously my mom took punishments. Had we gotten caught, both of us would have done serious time. Chris might have had a curfew imposed. I probably would have faced another month without video games. Regardless, it was amazing, and I truthfully have never forgotten it. It's one of my favorite gaming moments from childhood. It seems ridiculous, but it was awesome. The suburban nerd equivalent of marching to certain death together in pursuit of a common goal. Of course, though, I refused, because my mom is truly terrifying. I could literally go on for hours. Chris was always there. He was a rival, a friend, and everything in between. But he was always there playing with me. Virtually all of my formative experiences involving video games also involve Chris in some way. But beyond just being player one, Chris has always been an inspiration to me. I don't think I would be doing this blog, this video series, if it wasn't for his slavish devotion to the things he loved. Whether it was the trombone, stand-up comedy, his inexplicably strange love of US presidents, he's always put everything he's had into the things he loves, and he's always stuck to his guns. What do I love? Well, amongst other things, I love video games. And without Chris to look up to, I don't think I'd be as good at loving them as I am. So, thanks, Chris. You're all I could ask for in an older brother.